I have a worry about this. Yes, most of the countries have legislation about child labour. How many of them actually implement it? I'm well aware that India, for instance, in about 3 years ago, passed an act that prohibited child labour for under 14-year-olds in 79 different trades. The idea was that particularly child domestic servants would be released and would go to school. 3 years later, what has happened? Nothing. A few places have had raids. Hardly any resources have been put in place to actually provide the education for these children in place. And if you're not careful, there have been many cases of actually people diving in and stopping child labour and actually making things worse for the children. Save the Children looked a few years ago at football manufacture in Pakistan, a little town called Sialkot, where there was a lot of football manufacturing going on, and an American organisation tried to stop it. As a result, all the families that were dependent on this revenue suddenly lost everything, and the children finished up actually in far greater danger doing things like prostitution instead. So the point was being made by Save the Children that it has to be an evolving situation. Do not just go in and say stop, but actually look very carefully at what the possible implications can be. In Sialkot, what they developed was a way of the families working together on football manufacture and releasing the children to at least go to school part-time. Also to actually try and target the most hazardous work first, like child soldiers, for instance, or children in dangerous chemical situations, or brick making and things like that. Some children do decide that they want to work. They're proud of working. One organisation in Delhi called Butterflies actually created a street children trade union to actually protect their rights when they were assaulted by the police or stopped doing certain things. So it's a more complex situation that has to be looked at very sensitively and look at what is the best interest of the child in that situation, which is actually one of the key rights in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. All decisions should be based on the best interests of the child. A lot of rural situations are finding that with the size of the families, the amount of land available to actually sustain the family is insufficient, and that is leading to the many immigrants going to the cities. What India has found is that if you can educate the girls, almost invariably the family size begins to come down. In India, the culture is such that the girls, when they marry, support their in-laws. And because of the health problems in the past, you needed 2 or 3 sons to ensure your old age was secure, so you got large families. States like Kerala, where the literacy rate's about 91%, now have an average family size, I think, of about 4. Bihar, where the literacy rate's about 27%, is still 8, 9, 10 children. So you do see where education comes in, and particularly education of the girls and the women, the family size seems to come down. It also requires confidence that the health service will deliver and that your children will in fact live.
Maybe I want to add on that. In Africa, many African governments in the past have not respected human rights. The adults' rights, including the children's rights. And people in the leadership of African governments have been involved a lot in issues that are selfishly helping them. Maybe that is why we're talking about corruption, lack of concrete programs to develop the people. And as a result, the rural communities have been most marginalized. They have been impoverished in many African nations, and therefore people and children have been leaving rural communities thinking that in urban centers or cities there is better life. So the strategy that has been proposed, say in Kenya, is to empower people in the rural communities to stop the exodus of people into the cities, and also to stop the exodus of children into the cities by making sure that people in the rural communities access clean and safe water, electricity, good housing, health services, and education and other social amenities. That comes to the population issue you're talking about. I know population really is not the, okay, it is an implication in making children come to the streets, because a high population will press hard on the resources, on the national resources, and therefore people will be struggling or competing for the little or meager resources, and therefore it would bring that confusion and displacement of many people, including children. But you see, the rural communities are not getting information on health services, including contraceptives and family planning, education. They're marginalized. Therefore, you find women in the rural communities are ignorant of this, and therefore they have more children compared to the little resources that they have, and that still has an implication of pushing children to the streets eventually. Yeah, but I think the governments of Africa have lacked the political will to help stop the problem of street children. Yeah, in terms, like the question he asked, it comes to juvenile justice administration. Yeah. Like he says, my colleague says, fine, we can have very good policies that are formulated by African governments. We can have good legislations, good laws, but there is the lack of political will to implement them. We can have Minister for Children Affairs with officers in that department, but really they don't impact on the rights and the welfare of the child at the grassroots level. So there is lack of enforcing the policies and the laws. They are good on paper, but then they do nothing to improve the lives of the people.
The review of the Convention of the Rights of the Child done in Geneva in the 20th anniversary, I think it was, they had a major conference looking at what impact the CRC have made in 20 years that it's been in existence. And the answer was very simply, on legislation, 8 out of 10. On implementation, 2 out of 10. A rather stupid argument, but it's there, I'm afraid, is that a lot of people in the United States, particularly in some of the Bible Belt, do not understand what is meant by children's rights. They think it's about parental control, and they come from a religious background where the dad has the say and the children have few rights except what the dad's head of the family, and that's that. And so they interpret this pressure for children's rights as something that is against their sort of family ethos and culture. So particularly the sort of extreme right wing within the United States is very anti this. They're also anti any other international organisation telling them what to do in the States, sort of a degree of arrogance. And they go around telling the rest of us what to do. I'm sorry if there are any USA people here. A lot of people in the USA amnesty groups feel equally strongly about this. Another more practical reason is that the United States is a federation. It has 50 states, 51 states. And an awful lot of the decisions and laws that are about or that impact on rights are made at state level, not at national level. Even things like death penalty, for instance. As a result, the federal government finds it very difficult to be able to speak on behalf of all those disparate groups and sign off without some of the states going up in arms and say, you're taking away our rights that we have locally. And therefore, the United States sort of federal government or presidents have found it very difficult to get that backing to sign. I know that Hillary Clinton has tried to revise it. She's interested, but at the moment, with the present sort of state of House of Representatives there, I don't think she's got any chance.
Yeah, maybe I want to add for Somalia. As we all know, Somalia has lacked any government for many years. So there was nobody actually to sign for them.
a very simple explanation. but
Yeah.
Because earlier you said, the street kids, the push and pull, and you call it exploitation. About the kids working.
Yeah.
So, for example, the kids in Morocco, if they come and they want a job, and you turn them away, argument's sake, so you're supposed to, as like a, good social thing, whatever, you're going to be like, no, I can't give you a job because you're supposed to be in school.
Yeah.
If they don't go to school, then you don't give them a job, then what do they do?
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of organisations working in Morocco, they actually try to do the apprenticeships scheme, so they actually try and get children to do mechanic courses, carpentry courses, and they can actually access like employment that way. In terms of actually working on the streets in Morocco, that is a problem. A lot of children who work on the streets in Morocco actually sell like tissues, chewing gum, cigarettes. They like shine shoes, that kind of things. In terms of actually employment for these like children, there's not, I don't think they would actually be employed by like people out there. It's probably just all undercover things and like nothing legal. There is a problem with like child maids in Morocco. However, in the last few years they are actually trying to combat that, and they are actually trying to get them to go into schools, and they have actually recognised that there is a problem. I think the actual the age of like children working in Morocco now, it used to be below 12, but now it's below 14. They can't work, so they have actually extended that.
What is the actual age that legally they have to go to school?
16, I think.
16?
Yeah.
So if someone comes to work at 15 years old, say, and you give them a job, is that illegal?
I'm not too sure, to be honest, on the legality of that. However, if they have been living on the streets and they are actually rehabilitated and they actually get some kind of apprenticeship schemes, I know a lot of organisations, even one of the organisations we work with, they will actually have that in-house. So they actually have a scheme where they work with like carpentry places, and they actually employ them under their wing. So in terms of that, they are actually still under the organisation.
If you are not able to provide for the child, to give an alternative to that 15, 16-year-old child who wants work, and the child, if you deny the child work, then the child is going to die of hunger and starvation. And the law says children, say under 18 or under 15, 16 years should not work. And the person who is supposed to ensure that the law is implemented and protects everyone, who is the government, does not ensure that the child, any child or person who is under 18 or under 16 is catered for in terms of basic needs and requirements, is not doing their work. And you also turn away the child. Then is it at the best interest of the child? Because now everybody is rejecting, the child is not in school, the child is not getting his needs and his rights, the child is trying to survive on his or her own by seeking work, and you are using the law to deny the child that work, so the child misses everything. That child becomes a human being.
one of the most important things that many NGOs do that are working with street children is vocational training. If the child is younger, yes, get them back into school if possible. But once a child has got to 13, 14 years of age, and if they've missed out school a lot, it's going to be very hard to get them back into education. So certainly in India and a lot of other locations where we work, there are vast numbers of vocational training schemes which we bring children into. We teach kids in India to do cycle repairs and motorcycle repairs, computing work, all sorts of things. In fact, we had the 21st girls trained as taxi drivers in Bombay. But to go through a training scheme when they're still children, when they're still aligned to a particular NGO, and then move them and try and follow them through into the full-time job later. That is a very common way of working with these children in this sort of middle era where they're sort of not going to go to school and they're not quite ready for work yet.
But I thank the panelists.